Hello, everyone. It's me again, Joe Clark, and I thought it was probably time to do another one of these CML video walkthroughs. This time around, we're going to focus on the upgrade to CML 2.8.0, which, if it's not yet out by the time this hits the press, it will be out shortly. 2.8.0 is worth another upgrade look for a couple of reasons. One, it requires a few extra steps to get ready for things. And two, it replaces the underlying Ubuntu Linux operating system with a new version. So we're not transitioning off to another distro of Linux like we had to from CentOS to Ubuntu, but we are going to move to 24.04 from 20.04. So it's still an in-place upgrade. You're not going to lose any data, so it's not as big of a lift and shift as it was when we moved from CentOS to Ubuntu. But there are a few things you have to be aware of. And if we have some time at the end of the video on the upgrade, assuming nothing goes wrong, we'll look at a few of the new features in 2.8. So what you're seeing now is my CML 272. Now, it's first of all, read the documentation. I did a little bit at least, but yeah, get familiar with the in-place upgrade instructions that uh, the team wrote for CML because they're pretty useful. One of the things it's going to tell you to do in there is you need to be on 272. So you may not be. You cannot jump right from wherever you are to 2.8.0. You can only jump from 272 to 2.8.0. So check the version. This is what you should see. 272 build 26. If it says 270 plus build 2, that's not 272, that's 270. So you want this version number. When you're there, first thing you need to do, and this is new to the CML 2.8 upgrade, head on over to Cockpit. So the CML server port 9090. So head into Cockpit, and you're going to need to do a software update. You're going to have to update all the Linux packages first. Now, this doesn't put you on Ubuntu 24.04 yet. The upgrade, the CML upgrade, is going to do that. But this gets you to a place where you're ready to do that. And the documentation, which I told you to read, says this. So you can do it in two ways. You can come over here to the software updates tab or pane in Cockpit. I don't really like to do it this way. I like to be a little bit more hands-on in the terminal. So I'll go over here to the terminal. I'll sudo, get a shell. That's what the little -s does. I'll probably enter the password incorrectly, so there's that. So now I'm root, and now I'm going to do an apt update. Let that progress, should be fairly quick. You are going to need to be connected to the internet for this, just FYI. And then you see I have some packages that are upgradable. I'm going to run apt upgrade, and I'm just going to answer yes. Get everything up to date that I need to. Depending on where you are after if you had to do an upgrade, a pre 2.8 upgrade, like 2.7 to 2.7.2 or 2.6 to 2.7.2, you may have different numbers of packages available. It usually doesn't take too long, depending on your internet connection, to install these. Now, something to be aware of. So I full disclosure, I did one of these upgrades first on my cluster. This is my standalone at home. The cluster, the same caveats will apply. So everything I'm telling you for standalone applies to cluster. But with cluster, you have multiple instances of CML installed. For each one of those, you'll have a different server up here. So I just have the controller, CML controller, but if you have a cluster with multiple computes, you'll list all the computes here, connect to each one of those, and do the same apt update, apt upgrade procedure. Just keep going until you hit all of your compute nodes and your controller. So everything's done there. It did install a new kernel, so I'm going to want to reboot. The installation instructions say if it tells you to reboot, reboot. If it doesn't, just reboot. No matter what, just do at the end of this, do a systemctl reboot. You want to do this on all of your cluster members too. Again, this is standalone, what I'm showing you here, but if you've got a cluster with multiple computes, reboot all of them. The order, well, I shouldn't say that. If the order does matter if you're not yet on 272. If you're on 272, the order really doesn't matter. They'll all come back up. But if you've got a cluster on any other version, it's best to reboot the controller first, wait for the controller to come up fully again, and then go to each one of the computes and reboot it, because they kind of want the controller to be there on their first try when they try to connect to it. So just be aware of that. If you're already on if your CML cluster is already on 272, don't worry about it. The reboot order doesn't matter. Just make sure you reboot everything, all of your nodes. One of the things this will do is obviously you're rebooting, it's going to shut down all of the labs that you might be running. So you might want to, ahead of time, we're going to do it now, once my CML server comes back, you might want to, ahead of time, put your CML cluster or server into maintenance mode so no one can log in. But we'll go ahead and do that now. It should be back up. This doesn't take too long. So yeah, it's back up. So I'll come over here to the main CML interface, log in as admin, and I'll do a few things. Yeah, I've got disk space is an issue, but I will come over to system administration, and I'm going to put this in maintenance mode. So just in maintenance mode, go to my compute host. Even if you don't have a cluster, you need to do this. Select all of your computes, all of your controller, your computes, all of them. Change their admission status from ready to registered. So that'll turn things red. Don't worry about it. That's fine. And then we want to go to the upgrade system. Choose the file. This is going to be the 2.8 file. So this assumes now you've done the apt update, you've done the apt upgrade on all your nodes. You're already on 272. So you get to 272. You do one more. Once you're at 272, you do one more apt update, one more apt upgrade. You reboot. You put your server, if it's not already, or your cluster, whatever, if it's not already in maintenance mode, put it in maintenance mode. You mark all of your compute members as registered, not ready, and then you can update, or upload, I should say, the package, the update package. So depending on the connection your current client machine has to your server, this could take some time. I'm fairly well connected, so it goes pretty quick. It got uploaded, great. Now we're going to head back over to Cockpit, and we're going to do the upgrade to 280. Logged into Cockpit, I'll go to the CML2 tab. I'll scroll down. The reboot also made sure that nothing is running. So at this point, there are no labs running. That's good, because you need to make sure they're all shut down before you do any upgrade. So there's no labs running. Everything in maintenance mode. Everything is ready, or registered, not ready. Now we can do a software upgrade. So we come to the software upgrade option here. Click the upgrade button. Yes, we want to do that. And we scroll down to find the log. This is going to spew lots and lots of stuff. Because, as I mentioned, we're moving from Ubuntu 20.04, we're going to move to 24.04. So we're actually doing a dist or release upgrade, release upgrade. We're adding a ton of new Linux packages to the server, making sure everything is good, checking, and double checking everything. This is one of the things CML does nicely, I think, is handles all of the cluster member upgrades. If you are in a cluster, it handles all of those upgrades automatically. So depending on if you are in a cluster, depending on how many compute nodes you have, this output could be even longer and take even longer to run, because it's doing that same Ubuntu upgrade on all of your compute members in your cluster. Again, this is standalone, so shouldn't take all that long. But I wanted to I'm not going to cut away. I'm going to keep with you here and show you how this is happening live. And again, you'll have to keep scrolling manually to keep up with the log. One of the things that likely will happen to you as this is going is Cockpit will disconnect. Um, and you'll see that here, Cockpit may disconnect because it's upgrading Cockpit. We're going to actually get a new version of Cockpit. That's fine. Don't panic. The upgrade is still running, even though Cockpit disconnected. And I'll show you a way that you can get access to the log again, even after Cockpit is disconnected. So the keep it running, keep it running. The other thing that bit me, in doing this that might bite you is when Cockpit disconnects. If you try to log back in and it tells you bad username and password, don't panic again. It hasn't destroyed your sysadmin account or anything like that. What it has done, or what might be happening, is a permissions issue. So if I bring up, let's see, I'll bring up one of my terminals here. You can see that. Probably need to make it a little bit bigger. So let's SSH to my server. I'm going to go to sysadmin. There we go. That's better. So you SSH to the server on port 1122. That's the real SSH port to get to a shell. That should still work, and that will relax you, hopefully, in thinking, oh, great, my account isn't blown away. The password still works. But you may notice, if just become root again, the permissions in this file or in this directory, in the home directory for sysadmin, most things are owned by sysadmin and sysadmin. That's good. If you find that this config.config directory is owned by root, you can see the permissions are rather restrictive, only to the owner of the directory. That will cause all Cockpit operations to fail, and the error will be rather cryptic. Bad password. No, it's not a bad password. I just SSH'd in. So if you find that is the case, you can just do a change own -r sysadmin :sysadmin dot, assuming you're in the sysadmin home directory. How do you know that? You do a pwd. You want to be in home sysadmin. If you're worried using dot, just say change own -R sysadmin :sysadmin space home sysadmin. That changes all of the ownership to sysadmin. Now you can see everything's sysadmin, and that should resolve. And the -R does it recursively, so it goes down subdirectories. So that should put you perfectly where you need to be. Now your Cockpit login should work again. You'll likely won't run into that. I ran into it on my cluster simply because I was doing other things, troubleshooting process. I may have become root and done something. But if you do find yourself in that situation, it's easy to recover. Don't panic. So you can see a lot has gone on since we jumped over to the shell, but we're still part of that upgrade. So this is, if you had to do an upgrade to get to 2.7.2 before you went to 2.8, you might have thought, well, that was fairly quick. Just copied a few packages, did a few database tweaks, so on and so forth. This is going to be a lot longer, because it's got to do all of those core Linux package upgrades. So you are going to wait a lot longer here. Again, I want you to get used to looking at this, making sure you're comfortable with it. One other thing that you can do back at this terminal, get rid of that one real quick. Back at this terminal, if you wanted to see the same log file here, even if Cockpit disconnects, you can go to var log, and there's a viral2 directory in there, and then in there is a setup directory. And you'll see that if we look at the files being touched last, you see that there is this viral2 software upgrade log. If we tail that, tail minus capital F will follow it as the file updates. It will the screen will refresh with the new content. Capital F versus lowercase f. If the file was to get rotated, it'll just reopen the new file, but this won't get rotated. But you can see here, we're seeing the file go live, and if you come back over to Cockpit, you can kind of see it doing the same thing. They're matching the same output. So that's good. You can keep watching this so that you're absolutely confident. I know that maybe you have a lot of users using CML. CML is very important in what you're doing, and you want to make sure that the upgrade works. And disconnecting Cockpit can be kind of disconcerting. So you just want to make sure you're comfortable. So let's keep watching this log. This still is going to take a little bit of time. I'll come back to you if Cockpit disconnects. I think it will, and then we'll pick it up from there. This way, not having to wait and watch my log go, because you're going to have to watch your own in a little bit. Okay, so it happened. Cockpit blew a tire. As soon as I saw it scroll by, as soon as Cockpit itself was updated, I lost connectivity. You can reconnect and log back in, but if you've been now tailing the log file on an SSH session, you don't have to. You'll get the updates live here, but let's see. You can still try it. Yes, certificate is not self-signed now, so I'll come back over here. That's one thing. I am using a CA sign, a Let's Encrypt certificate on this server, but you notice that the error Firefox gave me there was it's self-signed now. So the certificate gets replaced in the upgrade because of the kind of the monumental shift from Ubuntu version. So just be aware of that. You'll have to reinstall if you do have a CA sign certificate, you'll have to reinstall that after the upgrade completes. Also notice we got a nice little Cisco logo here on Cockpit, but we should be able to log in. Save now. Don't worry about this error yet. The upgrade hasn't finished. But if you do get this here and you can't see the log, don't panic. This is why we have this going. So if this is the case, you log in, you haven't done, the installation hasn't fully finished. You haven't fully finished or rebooted yet. Don't worry. Don't panic. You've got the SSH. You haven't brought the SSH session up. You SSH port 1122 to the CML controller or server. Log in as sysadmin, same credentials, sysadmin, your sysadmin password, and then look at that software upgrade log. And again, that is under /var/log /viral2/setup, and the log is viral2 software upgrade.log. Just tail that, and I'll show you the message ultimately that we're looking for to validate that everything is good. But if Cockpit does look like a controller and everything is good, and you do see the drawer for software upgrade, you can click the View Log button, and that will show you again the same live log. But again, don't worry if you don't see that yet. We're still in the middle of an upgrade. So I'll come back. We'll continue to look at the log, and I'll come back when it's complete and show you how it's complete. Because again, you're going to have to look at your own for a while. No use staring at mine. Okay, we're here. We're finished. This is what we're looking for. Global upgrade complete, code 0. No errors happened. This will take a lot longer to see on a 8-node cluster than it will on my standalone here. But you can see that it finished at 5:43 UTC. That time doesn't look exactly right, but it did finish. Next thing we're going to need to do is reboot. And before I show you that Cockpit will recover, let's just go ahead and reboot. So we'll Control C to get out of the log. We'll do a systemctl reboot again. And we see SSH disconnected. Back over to Cockpit. Hopefully you didn't spend time obsessing over those messages in the logs. those can be red herrings, and we don't want to necessarily focus on that. Yes, if something does go wrong, we'll have to go back and look at the logs and figure out what that was. But you saw at one point it was saying like network manager not ready, trying. That can happen. Don't worry about it. Only when you get down to you're seeing an ultimate error where it says some error occurred and the global upgrade finished. That's when you should be concerned. Other than that, just you're going to get a lot of weird output. Don't worry about it. Just make sure the output keeps coming and keep looking for that global upgrade message done. Should be back now, so I'll try to reconnect. I always like to do command shift reloads or a reload to flush the cache, or you can just clear the cache for your server in your browser, just to make sure I've got all the latest stuff. I'm going to log back in here, and still not a compute host. Okay, so something's still not right. We'll have to troubleshoot that because you saw it, tried to load it, but we'll try to figure out why in a second. But let's see how CML is doing otherwise. Shift reload over here looks good. We have the right build ID, 280 build 6. See if I can log in. That all looks good too. Everything is kind of set good. We're still in maintenance mode. Glad to see that. So let's take the system out of maintenance mode first. Just make sure everything is otherwise working. Then we'll go and try to debug cockpit. We'll look at some of the cockpit logs and see what we can find. So I'm going to go to system administration, compute host. So we're going to work backwards this time. I'll click on I only have one, but if you have a cluster, just select everything, change the admission status to ready. That should turn green. Great. Now we'll go over to system maintenance. We'll disable maintenance mode and save. We still have something red here, so we'll go over and make sure all these turn green when they do. Everything green. Green if you have a cluster. All your compute should also turn green. That should turn this green down there. Yay, everything's green. Good. So let's go to one of my sample labs here. Just crank this up, make sure it's all working. Okay, let's see if we can get into the console. That looks pretty good. This is an IOL node, so it starts pretty quick. Okay, nodes are running. Let's take a look at something that should be running as a virtual machine. This node should be running as a virtual machine. Yep, I see some messages. It's going to take a lot longer to boot, but at least it is booting, so that's a good sign. So we're still in this mode of it thinks it's a compute only and not a controller. And why is that happening? I thought it would fix itself. Turns out I spent a little time investigating this while movie magic was happening. And turns out it's because my CML was installed initially way back when in like the 2.0 or in the first cluster release days where there was a separation between controller and compute. If you've installed newer CML, you probably don't have this problem. But if you come back to your shell, if you come back to your SSH session and you edit the etc default viral2 file, so I like to use VI, but I think nano is also on here. If you have this problem, let's see, default viral2, I think we have nano. Oh, good. So nano might feel like a better editor. Come down and find the run controller line. Chances are it says equals 1 without quotes. If it says equals 1 with quotes, you should be okay, and you shouldn't even need to do this. You should be in this boat. But if it says just run controller without equals 1 without quotes, if it says run controller equals 0 with or without quotes, you are on a compute node. But if you're on the controller and it says 1 without quotes, add quotes around the 1, double quotes. In Nano, to save, you would do Control X, ask you to save, yes, write it, just don't change the name of the file, hit enter, we're done. Now come back to cockpit, reload, boom, now it's a controller. Now it thinks the regular expression it was using to determine if it was a controller matches now, so everything is good. We are Good. So now what I'd like to do is cut over to, I have to change networks for this, but I'll cut over to a different CML server, my cluster actually, and I'll show you a few of the features real quick, a few of the new features in 2.8. Okay, so I moved over here to my cluster server. You can see I've got a few labs going here. The first thing, new 2.8 feature I want to show you is the smart annotation feature. So you can see here I've got a lab, make it a little bit bigger to see, shrink that down a little bit, with some annotations around these various devices, data center 1, data center 2, and out of band devices here. And you can see these annotations are special. They're not statically drawn. They're based on tags, and they're what we call smart annotations. And that means I can do things like move around the device and the annotation will move with it. And I can group devices in such a manner so that I can see how they fit into things. And that's done, as I said, by tags. So if you click on one of these devices, you can see I've applied a DC1 tag to it. And so everything with that DC1 tag will get grouped into this annotation. But maybe I don't want the internet to be part of DC1. So if I remove that, you can see the annotation automatically changes to take that into account. The annotation itself is configurable, so once it gets drawn, you can choose some parameters like whether or not to label it, and where you want that label, how big you want that label to be. The color is chosen randomly, but you can change that. You can do this thing called group by links, where instead of drawing the annotation around all of the devices, it will instead draw them around just the links that are connected to those devices. I prefer to have more of a all-encompassing annotation. And you can adjust the Z layer in terms of overlapping. So you can think of it as the Z axis. You can adjust that to have, if you have to overlay different annotations. In this case, I just have the one annotation. Every annotation is on its. There's no overlapping here. So that's smart annotations. The other thing, or one of the other things that's new, not really a new feature of CML, but a new node type we're shipping, is firepower. So by default now we ship on the supplemental ISO. So there's two reference platform ISOs to download. A main one that if you've been using CML for a while, that you've always probably downloaded. We have a refresh of images there, including a new Catalyst 9K image based on 1715. But then there's now the supplemental ISO, and on that you'll find SD-WAN, and you'll find the firepower images, the Firepower Management Center, and the Firepower Threat Defense, the virtual firewall. And so I've got those set up here, and you can see that I've got some servers connected to my firewall. Go ahead and console into one of these servers. This is like my outside interface, and then I've got a server here on the inside. That'll be server 1. And like I can ping over to server 0 to server 1, but I can't. Actually, I'll go over here and I'll plumb some additional IP addresses on this. So you can see ifconfig on this. See ifconfig, I'll do ETH0. See I've got one address, but I can do a ifconfig ETH0 colon say 3 that is inet 20.0.0.3 netmask like that. So now I'll just do an ifconfig again, and I've got that address. So I can come back over here to server 0. I can ping 3, and now, I don't know why I'm clicking that. Let's go to the console, and I'll create a 4. Oh, messed that up. Put the right address back on 3. Create a 4 on another interface. See if I got them there. 3, 4, yep. So I'll come back over to server 0 and I'll try to ping 4, and I can't. And if we go and look at the Firepower Management Center or has a web interface to it. So I need to, and I will go over to my shell again. Oh, no, it's not that. SSH-p13. There we go. I will do a SSH port mapping. Up to that, 192.168.255.183 is my firepower management center. Now I can go to there we go. This is just so I can get into my lab environment, nothing specific to the Firepower Management Center. And I click on policies. I want the access control policy. You can see I've defined one here. Let's take a look at the rules. So this access control policy says that I can ping from any source network. My outside happens to be that server 0 to .2 and .3 on the 20 network, and the 20 network can go anywhere. So that's why I can't ping .4. But if I were to add a rule, let's say, add rule, and I wanted to say that my networks, so my source network can be any IPv4, add source network, and my destination network could be 20.0.0.4, create network object. I don't need to create an object, so I'll add the destination. To do it, I want I guess I have to. So I'll just say name E0:4 if it allows me to do it, and just do 20.0.0.4, save. Oh, doesn't like that. There we go. I'll add that as a destination. So as an object, as that address, I want to allow any IP to get to that. I add that. I'll rearrange these. Just move move this up there. There we go. Save. Takes a little while. Save. I want to deploy to my firewall. Deploy. Some progress. So here we'll just start pinging. So it still hasn't deployed the policy change yet, but as soon as it does, we should start to see some pinging action happening over there. It does take its sweet time to deploy all of those changes. Saying something back here, success, come back over, maybe not fully deployed yet. Nope, still doing it. 50%, well, at least making progress, right? 75%, stay on target. So again, we want to make sure that it's able to pull that IP address. That IP address is 20.0.0.4, so it should be okay. 83%. And complete. Now we come back over here and we see that the pinging is working. So that's shows you how firepower works. It's kind of more of a graphical point and click. You can manage these firewalls locally, but Firepower Management Center is typically how you do it. The one thing, however, that Firepower doesn't include in CML by default is VPN support. For that, you would need an additional Firepower specific license for high crypto, for the strong crypto. Um, if you have access to such a license, you can apply it. But if not, all you'll get is more of the packet filtering and the firewall type capabilities, not the VPN capabilities. There are a few other new features of CML 2.8 dealing with things like LDAP, custom MAC addresses. So you can assign, for example, a custom MAC address to a node. Not everything, but you can adjust the last 3 bytes of a MAC address, and that can be very useful, especially if you have to deploy a node that uses the MAC address for licensing. So it's a nice new feature. Again, the LDAP improvements, if you're using LDAP for being able to map LDAP groups to CML groups. So those are some of the things that you'll find in CML 2.8. And of course, you now have a brand spanking new Ubuntu 24.04 server. And that comes with a lot of new improvements in terms of the virtualization layer that CML uses as well. So I hope this made you a little bit more comfortable in installing and upgrading to 2.8. I hope you're looking forward to some of the new features, and I look forward to next time when I get to tell you something else about CML. Thanks.